Okay, I think we should kick this off. Hello, Closet community. So happy to see you this week. I don't know about everybody else, but I'm just so thrilled that it's spring and warming up. And one of my hobbies is gardening, so making me happy. I also am thrilled about this session today. As always, with Closet Distributed, we will be recording this and sharing it with the broader community. I have been really watching the work of SEI and Andrea specifically, as she has done some wonderful things, both as the interim president of Strayer University and, over employment and other things that she's working on with SEI. Dawn has been working with me on multiple opportunities here at Closet, and this session is really addressing some of those significant gaps that we've been seeing in this pipeline, and really looking at it in an innovative way. So thank you so much for being here, all of you, and to our special guest Patty from Ohio Health. And I will turn this over to you, Dawn.
Well, thank you, Jamae, for that introduction, and thanks to all of you for being here today. I'm just going to do a little bit of context before we launch into some slides, and I promise we don't have lots of them. It's just really for you to put your eyes somewhere so that you can follow along, and then we're going to jump into more discussion. But I'm honored, one, to be part of this session and to be part of the work that Strategic Education, Inc. has done with Grads to Work. I was called by Andrea last February 2020 to ask to see my thoughts about what this program was all about and what we could potentially do with it. When she called me, I was at the Training Magazine show in Orlando, and that was the last show I've been to and the last place that I've traveled since. But who was to know that that was all going to happen? And when we started talking about this program, it made me excited because I love giving opportunity to all people when it comes to education and advancement. When we're talking about disadvantaged populations and young professionals who need greater direction, it makes me even more excited. But we didn't know that in a couple of weeks, we were all going to be put into lockdown and the entire academic system was going to change. And we were going to see so much in the world of diversity and inclusion and a greater emphasis on that. And we basically had to stop working the way we were familiar with. And then we're coming back now and we have a choice to do it differently and to do it better. And so this program, while it has evolved over the past 12, 15, 18 months, it's evolved during a time when I think it's most necessary and most critical. And so we're really excited about delivering this information to you. At the top, we want you to think, we want you to have a spark here and say, hey, this is something that I think I want to be involved in. And then others of you who are here who have already been pursuing diversity and inclusion efforts, who have already been rethinking recruitment, who have been rethinking how you position job requisitions and maybe stopping the promotion of you must have a degree and instead you can have skills, looking at different talent pools. For those of you who have started that process and started that thinking, we really want to engage you in working with us to see how we can help you make that all possible and to start seeing results from it. So with that, I'm going to introduce Andrea Backman. And Andrea is the acting president of Strayer University, as well as the chief employability officer with Strategic Education, Inc. And today we are going to, let me just share this whole screen here. We are going to be sharing with you today the Grads to Work program. As soon as I can make that possible, here we go. All right, there we go. All right, and can you all see? Andrea, can you see the screen? All right, excellent, excellent. Now, one thing that we do love most about these virtual programs is not to hear ourselves and to not show slides. We love to hear your questions so that we can tailor the conversation to you. Andrea and I have the opportunity to talk to each other a lot about this program, and so we want you to be able to have the opportunity to talk to us and to ask your questions. We know this work is not easy. We know this work is very good, which is why we stay at it. So we really want to give you the opportunity to ask your questions. And you may think that, oh, this is something I should know. That's exactly what we want to talk about this entire day. We don't know the right answers, but we're all here to figure them out so that we can help to benefit employers, employees, and the future workforce. So with that, Andrea, I'll let you go and explain a little bit about what SEI is doing.
Awesome. Thanks, Dawn. And May, thank you, Tiffany, again, for putting on at least this different forum for people to be able to connect on really important topics and innovations around the important work that we all do. So it's great to be here. Just quickly, I thought it might be helpful to share a little bit about who is strategic education, and then understand the connection between the work that Grads to Work is doing as it relates to strategic ed. So strategic education is, I see there's a chat that people are having trouble with the volume. Can anybody else, Dawn, can you hear me fine? You can, okay.
Yeah,
Yes, I can hear you fine.
it's a little like,
It's just a little lower, yeah.
it's a little lower. So I don't know if you want to just hit your volume or maybe just get a little closer.
Okay, I usually don't have this issue, but it is hard for a few people I see. So I'm going to lean in. I'm going to get my face pretty close to this microphone. So excuse me for that. Basically, strategic education houses three different groups. One is U.S. higher education, which is where we have both Strayer, and that's where we're going to talk about Grads to Work, Capella, and the Jack Welch Management Institute. We also have our Australia, New Zealand group, which consists of several different academic organizations, mostly Torrens, but with Think Education and Media Design School. And then we have an alternative learning unit, which houses our non-credit and employer-focused solutions. But across all three units, we are always focused on the connection between what we deliver and employment for individuals. So it's never disconnected from the idea that people who pursue something with us should better their employment prospects. So just with that as context, I thought I would share a little bit about the organization. Quickly, I would also say, this is fine to stay on this slide, Dawn, that I do wear two hats. So right now as acting president of Strayer University, but my primary role has been Chief Employability Officer for the organization. And just for context setting, what that means is thinking across all of the segments that I just showed you, how do we ensure that anybody who makes an investment with us has really strong employment prospects? So typically higher education has been, or at least where I've been focused is provide access to a larger population of people, as many as possible, help people be successful to reach their end goal, which is to get to graduation. And typically that ticket, or the way people thought about it, is if I get the degree, I'm going to be guaranteed better employment. I'm going to have better economic mobility prospects. And I think all of us realize that that is not the case. So how do we ensure that we create access, we gear ourselves and our students and learners for success, but that we connect employment to everything we do and to economic mobility for those who are with us. So I think that it's helpful for me just to describe that right now, Grads to Work is being sort of lifted under the Strayer University umbrella, but we recognize that there are pathways outside of a degree program that can help people, help employers, help the talent pipeline. So it's not all about degrees. So I would say that the work that we're doing and what we're going to share with Grads to Work has been initially focused on providing diverse young talent pipelines to employers. And on the other side, providing the student with a debt-free associate's degree, but the degree does not have to be the end all. And so I guess with this slide, it's a changing environment for learners in general. And me representing a university or a conglomerate of universities does not mean that I believe that the degree is the solution for everything. Connecting students to jobs and employers is how we think about it.
And Andrea, I just want to add one thing to that, because I think this is unique about what Grads to Work and SEI is doing. While there had been that focus on the associate degree, and while we know that there's great value for having an associate degree, we do know that there are alternative paths to get there. And one of the things about the Grads to Work program is that if you choose to have a young professional or a learner go through one of the other paths, it all still rolls up to the potential of getting the degree. So there's course value assigned to each of the courses that they get, the credit that could potentially roll up to the degree. So they're always working towards something, which I think is a great motivator and part of what we're going to be talking about today, giving learners the path to know that even if they do something small today, it accounts to get them to the path that could be very, very big going forward.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Dawn. So I think I'm going to talk in a second about the whole person, because I feel really passionately about this topic. But maybe, again, just a little bit of context. Strayer stood up Grads to Work about 2 years ago, prior to the pandemic. The intention of the program was to figure out how, because average age of a student coming through the Strayer pipeline is 34, and they've missed 10 years of economic mobility because they don't have sort of that the degree in hand. So how do we started thinking about how do we start working with a younger population, and how do we connect with our employer partners? We have close to 900 to say, how do we help young people find their pathway, especially those young people for whom college is an opportunity cost and economic mobility is not going to come easily. So that was the start of our work, is to try to get to people earlier who have the potential and who want college but can't get there young in life. Working through that, so we've had a couple cohorts of students go through and a dozen employers who've hired students. It's become clear with our population of young learners, but also with in the last year and a quarter, where things have been so difficult, that thinking about a person as a student, or thinking about a person as an employee, or thinking about a person as just name one factor is not enough. So for us, when we think about our student pipeline, who we also want to be great employees, we think about that in I'm a student, that's one slice of the pie. I'm an employee, I'm a son, I'm a community member, and we recognize that if we don't start to think about the whole person and every part of growing that person and the needs of that person, it's really hard to think about that person being successful in his or her pursuit, whether it be finishing a degree or getting gainful employment. And so we have a lot of work underway thinking about the whole person and what it means to grow them as both a great student who achieves and an employee who achieves. And I'm happy to share outside of this forum or later in questions what it is we're thinking about there. But this is something that we feel passionately about and that we like to talk to employers about. And then part of it is, the whole person, the whole experience matters. So you think about the whole person, but oftentimes and historically, we've thought about education happens, and then there's a thing that happens. You get a piece of paper, you walk across the stage, and then you get employment. Traditionally, right? Like the way that we've traditionally thought about it. And oftentimes that education does not have the essential employability skills that employers are looking for. So what if we thought about it not as, a linear series of events, but while you're being educated, you're also getting gainful employment, and you're also learning the skills that you need to be a successful member of society and professional in the workplace. And that is what Grads to Work seeks to do. So I won't spend too much time on this slide because we can come back to it. But I mean, in the discussion and question and answer phase, but we at SEI thought it was really important, if we were going to put a stake in the ground, that we were going to prepare talent for now and for the future, that we ought not to just use the traditional general education curriculum that most universities use, which is important. I'm a liberal arts graduate, so I love the liberal arts, but what if we took the 40% of an undergraduate degree program and created something that was skills focused? So as you're learning about history, you're learning about productivity. As you're learning about psychology, you're learning about agility. And that we're telling you as a student, as an employee, that yes, we're going to teach you these things, and alongside we're going to teach and measure how well you're doing in these skill areas as well. So what our students are learning, whether it's in a degree program or a boot camp or a course bundle, we're teaching skills that we've built alongside of years of work with employers. So employers informed these skills, and now we've baked them into everything we do. And so I know, Dawn, you maybe wanted to have a little bit of a conversation about the compassion and the business of being an employee component as well.
Right. So in addition to the 10 essential skills that Andrea has just been talking about, and how many of those skills were identified by conversations with employers and research done with employers, we were able to launch the Grads to Work program via a pilot. And that gave us exposure not only to what the employer needed, but also what the young professionals needed. And then it brought us to a point, which is where we are today, to realize that this is not a one-sided responsibility if we are going to make the future workforce the diverse place that we hope for and the successful place that we hope for. And so that's where the human compassion piece comes in, the business of being an employee. And what does that mean? How do we expect young professionals to know exactly how to process payroll forms or to choose benefits? We make this massive assumption that they know how, but they know how because they've learned from maybe their parents at home. Well, what if that's not the case? And so we've really been able to learn through firsthand experience by placing some of these young professionals into jobs to see and listen to exactly what it is that they need so that we can inform employers about what it is that they should expect and what they can prepare for. And then also to work with young professionals to say, this is what you need to expect and to prepare for. And in some cases, we're even finding that many young people come to the workforce regardless of where they're from. Everybody comes to a new situation with their old situation. And we have to be willing to accommodate for that and have compassion toward that. And we feel like what we've been seeing is somehow that got lost a bit. But the past 12 months has taught us that we need to be more cognizant of that than ever, because mental health is something that we've been able to have a bit greater appreciation for over the past 12 to 18 months. And why can't we carry that through in a positive way when it comes to the employee-employer relationship? So this is a big part of what's different now. We need to see more diversity in all fields. And it's not just because we necessarily want to fill open positions because we have a diversity initiative. We want to, and we need to do this because we also have customers and patients and volunteers and employees of all walks of life, of all races, of all ethnicities. And we need to have some commonality when these individuals, our consumers, are working with our workforce. There needs to be some resemblance so that there can be stronger relationships and greater tolerance in the workforce. And then we also want to introduce new industries and new roles to young professionals. And we can't just assume that, oh, their parents did this, and so they're going to follow in those footsteps. We have to create these paths. We have to create attractive job requisitions, job roles, and industries that young people will say, I want to do that. And then also our young professionals are going to create new jobs that we don't even know of because they're doing things differently. And we'll talk a lot about that soon too. We also are looking at diverse populations so that we can have better research and that some of the projects that we're doing at work have greater diversity and greater perspective. And so that our future leaders also bring this new and widened perspective. And then finally, we know how reliant we have been on frontline and entry-level workers over the past 12 to 18 months. And we really need to be considering how we can make those frontline workers as confident and educated as possible in the roles that they play, because this will be the infrastructure and foundation for what the workforce looks like going forward. And so what do we need? So if I polled all of you right now, which I'm not going to, so you don't need to be exactly on your toes, but I do want you to think about this. Many of you are probably saying, yes, Dawn, Andrea, these are all the things that we need. And these are all of the things that we want to do. And everyone is talking about it. But what we find is that many of the employers that we talk to about making a change in how they approach recruiting and how they approach retention when it comes to diverse talent pools, They want to, but they're afraid to say they don't know how to. And it's not easy. And we don't know all of the answers. But over the past 24 months, SEI has been practicing this and has been tweaking this framework and this program. And so now we're able to come to employers with a solution and say, we do have the framework and support system for you to lean on to recruit, develop, and retain whole person professionals from all different backgrounds. So we can assist in the diversity and inclusion initiative with a heavy emphasis on the inclusion. Because a lot of what we're finding is that if the metric lives only in recruiting diverse individuals, we can do that and we can check it off the list. But if we don't have a support system and framework internally with the employer, then we find that those people leave us. And so our metric needs to be about retention. And the way that we get to retention is by having an inclusive culture, one that's open to all different types of situations. And so we'll talk a little bit about what that means. And then young professionals who have not chosen that traditional collegiate route, which Andrea was talking about earlier, it shouldn't be said that they don't have the skills to be successful in some of the jobs that you have. We just have to open our criteria in terms of identifying those skills and recruiting for those skills and really understanding what skills will make that person who takes that job successful so that they can see career achievement. And so some of the Grads to Work goals and criteria that we sought after when we built the program was that there was an employer need, and that many of the employers that we were talking to and many corporations out there were looking to fill entry-level positions, and they wanted to find ways to mobilize their community, their regions. And so how could we potentially provide this type of talent for these functional areas within a particular region or within a particular industry? And then the way that we were able to do that was that we were able to leverage the campus network that SEI brings. As Andrea said, it's in close association with Strayer University. So the academic community and campuses allowed us to leverage existing partnerships to find students who would be able to take these types of jobs. And then working with the new hire, we always encourage that the employer agrees to some sort of support when it comes to the education. And many of you have tuition assistance programs, which can be leveraged for this. And again, this is all for the support of the whole person initiative, ensuring that there is an employment opportunity that's supported by education and essential skills. We need to have that balance so that the individual is as successful as possible in the job role. And then finally, again, looking at that retention and making sure that there's a path, a career path for mobility within the organization, so that if a student is brought into an entry-level position, they see that if they are working hard and if they are performing successfully, that there is a way for them to get to a job role or within a functional area that they most desire. And in terms of where the students come from, this has been something that we were looking to support, as Andrea was saying earlier. How do we create this economic mobility that we can sustain and that grows? And so while we were focusing on specific areas, we were first looking in New York City and Washington, D.C., the talent pool has grown significantly because we have had employer interest. And so we have been able to work with a number of different high schools throughout the country in order to get to low-income communities so that we can have a varying demographic throughout the United States to support frontline worker positions. And the education level, typically we're talking 18 to 24 high school graduates, and some of them have already started to pursue college courses. And then all are looking to have a career path. We definitely have a motivated group of individuals who are part of the Grads to Work program. And we have been focusing primarily on some of the functional areas within business, the more common ones: IT, marketing, business, customer service, healthcare, and finance. With our work with employers, though, we have been able to focus even stronger on some specific programs that were best suited for what the employer needed to have those individuals be successful in their job roles. And then the scalability component is something absolutely that SEI can bring to you, which is very difficult for an HR team to be able to recruit widely for positions like this. We have all been on that side of interviewing for an open position, and sometimes we get frustrated with the process. Sometimes we choose someone and 3 weeks later we find that that isn't the right person, and then we're back to the drawing board. With working with Strategic Education, Inc., it's an ongoing process that we have so that we can serve all types of regions, and we can do so quickly, and we can also always have individuals in the pipeline for future openings. And so most of the time when we talk about this program, and Andrea, before I go into what employers are saying, because we have the luxury of actually having an employer with us today, I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about what I was just saying in terms of the components and criteria of why grads to work and why we feel like the program is unique and the different components that it brings to the table. More specifically, if you wanted to just talk a little bit about the partnerships that Strayer University has, which allow for the scalability of the program.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Dawn. Well, first of all, SEI, I think I mentioned before, has close to 900 employer partners in the pipeline. So the idea is we've typically thought about partnerships as a way to bring education to employees. But one of the things we're very interested in doing, obviously, is in addition to doing that, thinking about being a talent pipeline provider. So we have, in our network, under the umbrella that I shared, 100,000 students and 200,000 alumni. And then in addition, these new programs that we're lifting, like Grads to Work, where we're going in a little bit younger into high schools and creating a new pipeline. And we also, Dawn, I think one of the things that I would also mention is we're very committed to thinking locally. So we have a lot of work streams underway to think about. For example, we're very deep in Charlotte right now, thinking about how do we help the Charlotte community, given that we're part of it. We have 3 campuses and 7,000 students, learners, and alumni. Charlotte is a growing market. It's very vibrant, and yet it has the biggest gap in terms of economic disparity, or the biggest, it just keeps widening. And the K-shaped recovery isn't going to help the people who are on the downward part of the K. So how do we become part of the solution with employers in, for example, a local market or in an industry? And so we think about the 900 that we have today, but we also think about small to medium-sized organizations in local markets, or anyone who's interested in helping to solve both employment needs, local needs, community needs, in new and different ways. So I hope I answered your question, Dawn. But
yeah, absolutely. And if you don't mind, we have another question that I think you can answer here. I know a lot of this work is done with Caroline within SEI, but the 10 Essential Skills program, we have a question about what type of research was done with the companies that were participating in order to come up with what those 10 essential skills should be.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. It's a great question. We spent years alongside big partners, embedded actually with several of them, studying frontline employees and what the employers were saying they needed that they didn't see and we didn't observe in those employees. And from there, after, like I said, we had a unit called Strayer at Work at the time, where we had research associates and teams of people at every level embedded with employers. We took those experiences, those insights, and distilled down those 10 essential skills, which we then shared back with our community and our employer partners, saying, are these the right 10? And so if you saw the 10, you might say, oh, one's missing. And we hear that sometimes, but we've captured, we think, the essentials, and sometimes the word could be swapped out with another word that you don't see there. But that research took us a long time, and we're proud of where we landed, and happy to share more if people outside of this conversation would like to know more.
Yeah, because you have a ton of research on the 10 essential skills. So I think that could be a great follow-up if we wanted to be able to provide that to our audience.
Sure thing.
So then you can all see on the slide, and then I promise this is going to be the last slide because we actually have the real thing. Here are some of the comments that we've been seeing from our employers. So just like take a quick scan and see what those look like. But you can see the word opportunity shows up a lot. And there's a lot of people saying that this is something that they have always worked toward and they feel like it has purpose. And you'll notice that when we get to speak with our employer representative today, who I'll introduce in just a minute, the passion shows through immensely. Hi, Patty, perfect timing. So I want to introduce Patty Wilson to the audience. Patty is coming to us today from Ohio Health, and Ohio Health has has been working with Grads to Work over the past couple of weeks to create the foundation for successful young professionals taking on some of the frontline jobs that Ohio Health has. And what we were so excited about when Ohio Health showed interest in this was that we know that today's healthcare system really needs to have a diverse workforce in order to be more patient serving, and so that we can welcome patients of all different areas to hospital systems so that they feel like they're working with individuals who understand them. And so with what we've learned about the healthcare system and medicine in general over the past couple of months, this is something that we got really excited about in working with Ohio Health. So Patty, I'd love to welcome you to the group here. And if you wouldn't mind in telling a little bit about all the great work that you do with Ohio Health for our audience.
Sure. Thanks, Dawn. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with the group today. But my role is academic partnerships. I'm the project manager in academic partnerships, and I work very closely with Strayer University and Capella University and some of their other institutions as part of that. And it was kind of by chance about a year ago or more that I spoke with our representative from SEI about this program that they were getting started, this Grads to Work program. So we were very excited to kind of dive into it a little bit more from our end. So our organization is about 30,000 associates. And one of our main goals in our learning division is that we're there to develop those 30,000 associates.
Yeah, and Patty's passion for doing so is amazing, but then her whole team is the same way. And it's something that if I could say there's a thread of all of the employers that we've been working with at Grads to Work, is there is at least one Patty. I mean, no, I know Patty, you're unique, but there's one person who's like Patty with each of the employers who makes our conversations and our work that much better, because we see it on their side, what they're willing to put forth in order to make this a successful program. So again, I'm not going to pull you all out there, but you need to have that passion in order to pursue these types of things. And as I was saying earlier, this is not easy work, but it becomes very gratifying work if you can stick to it and you can see that you're reaching some of these milestones, because you do start to see a difference. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that now, Patty, if you don't mind. So one of the things that I think a lot of our employer groups say is that it's really easy to do more of the same. It's really easy to take all of those open positions that you have and advertise them in the same ways and through the same channels that you always have. So what was it about Ohio Health that they said, hey, you know what, we're going to do it different this time. We're going to try something else. Can you talk a little bit about what the context was there?
Sure. So, and as Dawn alluded to, my passion comes from being in higher education for a number of years before joining Ohio Health. And so anytime programs like this crossed my desk anyway, my first thought is the community, right? The community that we live in, and how can we help those in our community to have these opportunities. And so when I was approached about the Grads to Work program, my first thought was, what a great way to help these young people in these underserved areas grow themselves, right? And contribute to an organization that contributes back to the community. And so that was kind of our biggest, aha moment, was we can help these students do this. We have a great tuition reimbursement benefit for our associates. And so we can help these young people work, earn money, get their degree, and really contribute to the community.
Yeah, and I think, and we mentioned this before, but having a benefits package that includes tuition assistance, I think is really critical as a launching ground for something like this, because then the financial component of it is a little bit off the table. You know that there's a system for doing it. And with what we've been doing at SEI is every organization's tuition assistance program is different. And so we have been agile in the way that we've been able to apply whatever your current tuition assistance program is to work in order to help deliver education for the students at a relatively low cost. So that's something that we just wanted to create. We know every single company is different, but the end goal is if you have the passion to do this, then we're going to figure out a way to make it work. So, in addition to having a tuition assistance program, what is the culture like at Ohio Health that would be willing and accommodating for a program like this that could take a little bit of oomph in order to make work?
So, our core values at Ohio Health, we have 5 core values, and those are excellence, compassion, integrity, inclusion, and stewardship. And so when we looked at a program like this, we were able to see how all 5 of those current core values that we have fit with this type of program. And our biggest focus was, not only the idea of inclusion, because we are able to kind of think about the types of students we're recruiting for the, SEI's recruiting for these roles for us, but also this idea of excellence, right? Because of the career readiness piece, the educational component, all of those things really helped us to see how our current state and our current core values would help us to align this program with where we are right now. It's been it's been a very tough, year and a half or so in healthcare. And, we have a lot of our folks are feeling a little bit of the burnout. They're feeling a little bit of the, all of that kind of stuff. And we've been able to support them through our benefits and through our culture and through all the things that our organization does to support our associates, that we really feel that giving back to our community in some way, like a program like this, is going to continue to help us grow and develop ourselves as an organization and all the communities that we serve.
That's great. And you said a word that I want to make sure we don't, that we address, the readiness component. We had a question about competency assessments. Like, how are we testing these students to make sure that they're actually going to be successful in the roles? And I want to be very transparent about that, because that is also a unique part of this process. So as we all know, you can provide education and knowledge to individuals, and some of them absorb it and run with them, and others maybe half listen. And so we need to vet, just like we do with any interview process. So Patty, I wanted to, if you don't mind talking a little bit about this, we had talked about different types of competency tests that we potentially wanted to introduce to those applicants that were interested. And for those of you out there, just to kind of give you a little bit of context, we are working with Ohio Health to have a virtual recruiting fair so that we can go out to all of the high schools and introduce them to the different types of roles at Ohio Health. And then we're going to whittle down those who are interested to those that are competitive. And we say that because, again, we don't want this to be an initiative where we can check ourselves off the list because we made all these hires from all of these regions that we were targeting. That is not the end game. The end game is that we want to make this a competitive process, and we want the individuals to be successful. And Patty, I know you had a few different types of assessments that you were suggesting. We want to put these individuals through these types of assessments in order to make sure that they're ready. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? And because it's part of the culture too at Ohio Health.
Right. So one of the things we do, and it's an assessment, but it's also a way for folks to see what they bring to the table. So we utilize the Clifton Strengths Finder survey, and we utilize that with all our new hires in nursing and in our laboratory space and across the system. And really what we do with that type of assessment is we help our associates understand where their strengths fit in with the organization, with the role they're going to be playing, right? And so one of the things we've been talking about on our end is, and I know you mentioned this before, is how do we support the associate once they become our associate, right? And I just got off a phone call here in the last hour with our executive sponsor of this project. And he said, it's really made them in support services start to think about, how do we really onboard all of our associates? Not because we know these are going to be young people, right? 18 to 24 years old. And it's not our typical entry-level hire, right? So how can we support them through our own development of our own associates and work with them and making sure that this is going to be a successful program for everyone? So the competency kinds of things, we're working with SEI to look at, all right, what are some things that Ohio Health does that might fit into this career readiness piece? Like, what is the curriculum of the career readiness, and how do our values and our things fit in with that? So, the one we were, kind of eyeing in on was the Clifton Strengths Finder, just to, again, help students to see they do have strength, they do have things they bring to the table, and how do those affect or fit in with the new roles that we're talking about them taking on.
Great.
Yes, I would add one additional thing, just from the starting point when we launched the program. I mean, I think there's often an idea that if you build something with all the best of intention, like we tore up our gen ed and rebuilt it with skills. Well, that's great. And we can measure how well students do academically, and we can measure their knowledge of skills. But unless there's employer validation that it's working, it really doesn't matter. So our intention along the way, so for the first few cohorts that went through, we are in contact with the employers to gauge from their lens, is this working? So that we can continually refine how we work with students and also how we continue to build the program.
Right. And Andrea, can you talk a little bit too? We mentioned the 10 skills before, and that's part of the whole process. But can you talk a little bit about how that 10 skills content is infused in much of the programming and learning opportunity at SEI?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the 10 skills is a start. We started there because, first of all, we had that deep research alongside our employer partners, but also because it represented the largest piece of education that anyone will consume across any of our units, right? So 40% of an undergraduate degree program. So we started there. And there's 15 courses in, if a student wants a degree, if the employer wants the degree, okay, so that's the starting point. If they don't, those skills are, they're very extractable into a non-credit format where you could put someone through like a skills academy that is non-credit and do it more quickly. But if you're thinking about the degree program itself, it's 15 courses. Well, inside of each of those 15 liberal arts courses, we have infused those 10 skills. So they're woven throughout, and they get increasingly more complex as a student goes through. So if you're learning about communication or teamwork, you start out elementary in the first course, and you can, or novice, intermediate, and you get to a somewhat advanced beginner, if you will, by the time you're done with those 15 courses. So there is an intention to both measure, but also with not just in the classroom, but on the job experience, have students build those competencies throughout.
Great. All right, so I like to talk about the parts of all of this that make us feel uncomfortable too, because we know not everything is shiny and perfect. And so, Patty, you must have some reservations about what could happen with recruiting students or young professionals from grad school work. And I also wanted to thank you for what you said earlier about this program has forced Ohio Health to rethink onboarding in general, because that's also an uncomfortable area, I think, for most companies. We think we have it, and we know we can do better. But it's a lot of effort to have a really great onboarding program, and it's always breathing, so we have to change it all the time. So as you know, you may have seen some of those holes within Ohio Health as you're now paying even greater attention to it as you prepare for incoming young professionals. What makes you nervous? What makes you a little bit scared about doing something like this?
So I think the biggest thing that we've had discussions about is the commitment, right? The commitment of young people, and Andrea, I think, kind of spoke to the fact that, education has changed quite a bit, right? Let's think about, we've been concerned about our new nurses we're hiring because their last semester or two have been virtual, right? Because there weren't placements allowed in the healthcare system. Well, it's the same for our high school students who many of them have spent the last year in a virtual world. Many of us, like I've worked from home for almost, 15 to 18 months. So that virtual world is now going to require them in our case to work in patient care, right? A lot of them will be maybe in patient facing areas, support services, things like that, where communication and commitment are going to be big. I mean, we have that with all our entry level positions, that commitment, right? Show up to work on time, be prepared, and those kind of things. And now we're talking about asking 18-year-olds who may never have had a job before, a full-time job before, to do that. Plus, we're going to be asking them to think about their education, right? Let's throw two things on you at once. Let's have you work. Let's have you, go to school. But we're hoping that we can provide the support, and I'm sure SEI is going to be providing some of that support. And so that's kind of been our biggest thing, is the commitment of the student, of the employee. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
So it's just hard at this point to even know. And because we're looking at lots of different areas across the healthcare system, it's going to be important for those areas to understand that there may be a little additional, learning information required.
Yeah. And Patty, another component that I think adds even greater context to what you were just talking about is that the job positions that we're talking about for Ohio Health are not easy. They may be frontline entry level, but these are jobs that are going to be patient facing, that are going to require many of the things that we think about in a hospital room that we're like, oh, do I want that job? So this is not even just a new to showing up to an office and how do I use the coffee maker, but this is some real work. Can you describe a little bit about some of these jobs and what they entail?
Yeah, sure. So we have our environmental services, which is part of our support services line, where our frontline associates are in patients' rooms. They're helping clean up after the patient. They're helping change the bedding. They're helping doing all of that kind of stuff. And we want to make it clear to students in our virtual kind of meet and greet that these roles require some interaction with our patients, who our patients are our number one priority. So we want to make sure that you understand the role we're asking you to take on. We have patient support assistant roles. We have patient transport or escort roles. So you might be moving a patient from one floor to the next. And then we have nutrition services, preparing and delivering meals to the patients. And then we have things like supply chain, who may not be patient facing, but any role within a healthcare organization has to be focused on how this is going to help our community and our patients. So it doesn't matter if you're I'm in learning. Everything I do is also leading towards helping our associates be better to help our patients. So that's the thing. That's a concern, is, we're going to ask these students to go do some things they may never have done before. And it's not going to be they're not glamour jobs, right? They're not, but we're hoping to support them with financial support and the benefits support and those kinds of things, to get them really thinking about where they want to be in the future, which is our goal, is to keep them with us in the future in whatever area they choose. But it's our responsibility to make sure up front that these students know what we're going to be asking them to do.
Right. But Patty, I think what you were just saying is what's so critical. Like, while the focus is the patient, and that's the mission of Ohio Health, we also know that these employees need to feel the motivation and know that they'll get recognized. And so we talked very early on about these jobs are tough. And if we are successful in filling these jobs, we immediately have to be talking to those individuals about what's next for them, to keep them motivated, to say, okay, today's job, you're going to go home and this was tough. And now you have to take classes, but we know that you wanted to focus in IT, and you will get there because there's a pathway in this hospital, and we're willing to promote you if we see that you're performing. So that's something that we encourage throughout, not just healthcare, but how do you bring on an entry-level worker and give them a career path from the beginning so they know what they're working toward?
And that's really where I think working with Strayer and Capella and other, components have really helped us to design that pathway. So anytime we're talking with associates, they can see that we do have that in mind, right? That we want to develop them and continue developing them, make them a continuous learner, whether it's, we talked about whether it's education or whether it's just, skill development or those kinds of things, whether it's degree or not. And so that's where we really try to focus, and our focus for these new associates is going to be, right, helping them get to where they want to be eventually.
Right. We have a question that's come in about the level of commitment from the Grads to Work participants, and also the level of employment responsibility. We know that we are asking young professionals to take on an education workload as well as an employer workload. So just to answer, it's different in every situation to the person who's asked. In some cases, they are going to follow an associate degree path. And then that's in Patty with Ohio Health, your tuition assistance program will help to fund that after 6 months of successful employment. In terms of the job responsibility itself, the roles that you're hiring for, what is the hourly commitment in most cases?
Well, so for full-time associates, it would be 80 hours a week, or 80 hours of pay. I'm sorry. We do two.
Yeah.
80 hours a week. That's a lot. Right? Oh boy. I feel like sometimes I work 80 hours a week, but so it would be anywhere between 36 and 40 hours. And those roles honestly can be day shift or night shift. Just depends, because hospitals never close, right? So that's also part of it. So we have a number of associates who are able to balance both of those programs. The nice thing I think about this partnership is the associate will be able to take the coursework at their pace that works for them. So maybe it's, one course every 6 weeks or 7 weeks, or, we're going to try to support them through that with our education reimbursement. So they're able to get that reimbursement every year. So,
yeah.
And our goal is for them to work on their associate degree in our instance, in our case. So that most of them will be working full-time positions. We do have some support also for part-time positions, but we're hoping these associates will be able to fill these full-time roles that we have.
And Patty, the reason I wanted you to answer that was because I think a lot of times when we talk to employers, they listen to this program and they're like, oh, an internship. And this is not an internship. And we are actually asking all employers to tell us about their open frontline worker entry-level jobs. And if that is a part-time job, that's great. But if it's a full-time job, then that's what's expected. We don't want you to feel like you're hiring an intern and you have to watch over them. We do not position this program at all as what I think that we held back on using apprenticeship and internship, because it's not what it is. We're helping you to recruit from a new talent pool, and we're providing essential skills and employment as part of that whole experience. So I think that's something that I'm glad you just said it. You said this is full time. In other cases we have, which I'm so excited to bring on Kumar, which is one of the students who's part of this program. And Kumar, you are welcome to put your video camera on now. Patty, we want you to stay too, because I have a few more questions for you. But it's something. Hey, Kumar, how are you? Kumar works with me on with a group called APIA Scholars, and Kumar works 20 to 30 hours a week. And so we do have a variation in programs and support based on the need. So it is across the board in terms of what the employer is expecting. That's how we tailor the program. Well, Kumar, thanks for joining us. This is Patty, and then Andrea, she'll be back in a second, but I'm so glad that you can join us today and talk to the audience. I'm excited to have you here. And not only, I didn't know that it was going to get set up this way, but Kumar and I talked a little bit yesterday about why I thought it was important to have his perspective on the call today. But then so many things have come up in the past 15, 20 minutes that give you more reason for Kumar to be here. And the one that I really want to talk about is how Patty said onboarding needs to change, because the way that we're bringing on our young professionals needs to change in order to create some success. And what I wanted to focus on, Kumar, if you don't mind me just bringing up a story that we talked about yesterday, was that when Kumar was recruited for a digital social media associate for APIA scholars, they immediately started processing payroll forms. And so the individual at APIA Scholars reached out to me and she said, hey, we haven't gotten Kumar's forms yet. And so I said, oh, let me check in. And so Kumar said, they're asking for a voided check so that they can process direct deposit. And I said, oh, do you not, this is what I said. Ugh, I'm just as bad. Not that anyone's bad here, but learning. I said, oh, you just have to write void on your check. And he's like, no, I don't have checks. And I was like, oh, of course he doesn't have checks. I don't even like checks. But my parents were always like, balance your checkbook, write the ledger. And we don't do that anymore. And Kumar is like, I have a virtual bank. And so I think that that's a great lesson for all of us as employers to think differently about how we've done everything the same way. And Kumar, if you don't mind to talk a little bit about your experience with your W-2 form.
Okay, so, well, to start off, my name is Kumar Elam. I also am a student at Strayer University, and I am a part of the Grads to Work program. So before I was given this opportunity to be in this program, I had no work experience whatsoever. So when I was going through the hiring process, they would send me emails and ask for certain forms for me to fill out. One of them was the W-2 form, and I looked at the form and I had no idea like what to do. So I was kind of stuck, and I just resorted strictly to my parents throughout the whole process of getting my forms filled out because I had no idea how to fill out the forms. But I still wanted, to work. So I was like, what do I do? So I just asked my parents what to do. And I would say it's kind of hard. I know it'd be kind of harder for me if I did not have someone there to help me get those forms filled out.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the reason I'm bringing that up is like multiple reasons. One, Kumar, thank you for your persistence and perseverance in getting those done. Thanks to your parents for helping, because, same here. Like when I was growing up there, I didn't know how to do everything. I had to ask my mom and dad what's going on, but not everybody has the mom and dad family system and we shouldn't assume so. But then also, Patty, you had right away when we started working with you, you kept bringing up the idea of executive sponsor and mentors, because you have the foresight to know that there are going to be questions and there are going to be different scenarios that maybe your young professional, new recruit is not going to feel comfortable going to their manager and saying, I don't know how to do this W-2 form. Super valid question. And also, Kumar and I were saying, if you make that mistake, you're dealing with the IRS for like the rest of forever, and nobody needs to take on that burden, especially when you just are starting out your employment process. So Patty, can you talk a little bit about what it was like for Ohio to consider having an executive sponsor for this program and mentors on top?
Right. So all of our new ideas, new programs, we need to have shared with our leadership, right? And so our executive sponsor is one of our VPs who has been in line with the program from the beginning to make sure that we share with him the information needed to share with leadership. And then as a group, me being from higher ed, I kind of know, and I have a young son, it's like, okay, they may not be ready for this, for the jargon. I know I got employed 4 years ago and it was overwhelming for me. And so I know that having someone within the organization to be like a friend, I mean, we didn't know what to call them, so we're calling them ambassadors. They're not a mentor, they're not a coach. They're just an ambassador. They're just a friend that you can contact at Ohio Health to help you answer questions that, you're right, you don't feel comfortable talking to your manager about or your supervisor. Mm-hmm. As we're speaking, my mind is going, and I just wrote down, we have an HR resource center, which is basically you call them and you say, hey, how do I do this? Whatever. I want to make sure I make them aware of this program, mm-hmm. so that they might be able to be a little more, I don't know, not more compassionate, but just thinking about, okay, this is a young person who is very new to this organization. and have some background about the program, so that when they get those calls and people say I'm part of this Grads to Work or whatever, they will know that and be able to help them. So I just think it's important, again, for the success, right? Because we have metrics we want to measure for the program. So I think that that's going to be important for us too.
Yeah, absolutely. And the idea of having mentors or resources to ask is really critical. And I'll just share a quick story. I worked with another student from the Grads to Work program, and we put her in a position where she was doing some customer service calls. And she needed to log in those calls throughout the day. And the employer came to me and said, Dawn, at around 2 p.m. every day, there's no activity and we don't know what's going on. So I reached out and I learned that this young professional had braces and she wasn't able to go to the orthodontist because they didn't have the benefits coverage that they needed. And by talking all day long, it started to create mouth sores, and she was just highly uncomfortable by the end of the day. And she didn't want to tell anyone that because she felt like she was doing a bad job. But at the same time, from the metrics, it looked like she stopped working. And so these are situations that if we didn't have someone for our students to go to and be transparent and be vulnerable, then we can't help. And that's the worst thing that we can do, because then that individual ends up quitting or getting let go. And it wasn't based on poor performance for the skills that were required. It was based on something completely different that could have been helped. And so that's where we do in our organizations have so many resources. We kind of just have to be better listeners and then know how to respond to varying situations. And I know that sounds like a lot when it comes to the employer having to do all these things, but if the systems are there and the frameworks are there, and we do have a mentorship program, or we do have a culture that's responsive to these things, then we can find ways to keep our good talent and get over these things and create a more successful and a pleasant experience at work. Andrea, is there anything that you want to add here in terms of the overall experience that employers should or could be more aware of in terms of accepting this young and next generation of workforce?
I mean, well, first I would say when Patty was talking, when you were talking, I was thinking about the whole person. So that braces example is a really good example of someone who's learning how to grow into her skin and be able to maybe just tell someone, it hurts, I need a break. Those are the kinds of skills that people need to grow. So that's an example for me of the whole person idea that we started the presentation with. But I would say it's not easy. We at SEI have made sure that we have hired some of the Grads to Work students as well. So we're also understanding how much of a commitment it is on the employer side as well. I think it's a true partnership, because the more the employer, the more Patty tells me how the students are doing and what we can do to better support the person on the front end, but maybe what can Ohio Health or other employers do to set up a program on the front end that helps that person launch into professional life. That I sort of think about it as a partner dish and a partnership and a petri dish.
Right.
A partner dish.
Right. Good new word. Yeah, absolutely. So let's get to a little bit more. Kumar, I want you to come back on if you can for a sec, because I'd love to talk about the expectations and outcomes that employers have with a program like this. But also I want to hear what the student or young professionals expectations are as we move forward with a program like this. So Kumar, right now, I know like with our working relationship, we have certain activities that we work on a weekly basis. But if you were to say in 6 months, where do you hope this work takes you? What are you looking at in terms of both your education as well as employment in the next 6 months? What are you hoping for?
Well, overall, I hope it prepares me to get another job, because it's an internship. So I just hope I learn as much as I can from the overall opportunity, it being my first job or internship, whatever you want to call it. I just hope I gain from it in a positive way to get another job and have the work skills for the next job possible.
Yeah, and I think that's I've been hearing that a lot, both from the employee and employer side. Like the way that we work now is a little bit like we called it the gig economy, or we say think project based, so that you come in and you do some work and then you gain some skills and now you can find something else. And I'm interested to hear, Patty, from the healthcare perspective, what's your take on that, like getting some skills and then moving on? I know you said earlier you want to keep these individuals within Ohio Health so that they continue to grow. But I think we do have to face that fact that a lot of people are coming in, they're getting some skills, and now they want to go in a different direction. So how do we feel about that?
So we did talk about that quite a bit, and understanding that we're hoping that these associates, we don't want associates to stay in entry level positions. So we know, whether it be with this program or any other program, those are very much an open door, swinging door kind of role, right? But what we're hoping to do then is to see how we can help these new grads continue within the organization and maybe take on a leadership role in environmental services, or, and I'll just say this, because we're healthcare and the limitations of the associate degree programs that Strayer offers, we know that some of these folks may determine that, they want to go back to school and maybe do a degree in surgery tech, or, something that's more patient facing. And we will be able to help them with that because they already have their core courses already done for their associate degree. So getting that next, level will be quicker, and we can keep them within the organization. We want them to be able to transition, right? And we have that understanding for all our entry level folks. Some of them make careers out of those positions, and it fits for them. Right. And others want to continue, and we want to make sure we are able to have an idea for those associates of what they can do within Ohio Health as they begin to get closer to finishing their degrees, to, and give them opportunities to look into those options.
Great. All right, and I have one follow-up question for you, Patty, and Kumar, I'm going to ask you this too, but on the reverse. So Patty, as we're weeks away from recruiting some grads to work students for your open positions. If you could say in 2 or 3 words or sentences, what are you hoping for? What are you hoping for? Who do you hope shows up? Give some description of what that individual shows up with.
I hope the individual is someone who has a passion. I don't care what the passion is, but they have a passion, and they realize that there are people here to support them to reach that passion. And whether we're a stepping stone or we're a career, I really hope they see us as a part of their community that can help them get where they want to be.
Great. And Kumar, so right now we work together, but don't worry, I will take no offense to whatever you say, but what are you hoping for in an employer, whether it's me and APIA scholars or your next employer? What are some of the expectations that you hope your employer upholds as you take on this job or pursue this job or move on to another?
Overall, I would just say that they're most understanding and very helpful, since I'm not, I wouldn't say this is my first job experience or my first job opportunity. So being helpful and understanding, working with me to help me develop to get to where I need to be.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're seeing the research out there, right? I guess a few years ago, we started to get wind of the fact that the young generation coming in didn't care about a paycheck. And then we started to see that the benefit that they were most interested in was learning, development, and advancement. And then I just recently read a report that said recognition is what they need. And it's not even recognition in terms of pay or added benefits. It's, hey, you did a good job, or you know what, we got to work on this. So let's take 5 minutes and figure that out. And so I think a lot of things that we've said today, it is about that compassion and being sensitive and listening and responding. Andre, I think, Andre, you said earlier when I was discussing the braces example, but I think the way you said it was far more impactful. Hey, I need a break. I think sometimes we just need to, when we're talking employer to employee, kind of just step back, reflect and say, what is it that you need that we can help each other grow together so that we have a stronger relationship? Because at the end of the day, the employer, the relationship between the two is what's going to carry the progress forward. It's what's going to create the culture, and it's ultimately what's going to bring us to productivity and appreciation. So we're about done here today. And Andrea, if there's anything you want to say, or Patty or Kumar, just to end things, but I won't put you on the spot because I think you've all said great things along the way. I'm just super appreciative for all of you being here today, the audience as well, and staying with us a little bit past the hour. We are going to give you some time back because I think that's the best gift anybody can give anyone these days. But Andrea, is there anything that you want to say, some parting words?
Well, it's so fun for me to obviously be here with Patty and Kumar. Honestly, I hadn't met either of them, and to see how it all comes together. And I think it is just a true partnership between young people who really want to get ahead in life and change the situation for themselves and their families, for employers who care about that and creating a talent pipeline that you can grow people, grow your organization, grow your community. And for us at SEI, whose mission is really to create economic mobility. So it all comes together today. So thank you.
Yeah, and go ahead, Patty.
I just wanted to share one more thing. And as part of the recruitment strategy, we're actually going to be reaching out to some of our own associates who have children who have recently graduated, who maybe, our associates are all in different areas of life, right? And so are their children. And so I think giving back to our associates and helping their young people figure out what to do is going to be important also.
Great. Well, thanks to all. We do have one poll question. I think I've been teasing that the whole way through. So I am just going to throw that up there right now. And for those of you who are on, really consider this, because our premise here is not just to share stories, although we love talking to each other and giving you some ideas, but we really want to help move this along and start to make a change. And one of the things that we were talking about earlier is, even if you have one open position and you're saying, you know what, I want to give this a try, then tell us about it, because we can help to introduce that framework to your organization so that you can have a win and you can say, let's do more. Or for those of you like Patty in Ohio Health, you guys have hundreds of open positions. And we actually said, hey, wait a minute, let's do this properly. Let's start with 10 and we'll build on our successes. So there are ways to do this. And the last thing we want to do is rush anyone's career. We have a long life ahead of us, all of us. And so we just want to make sure that we make the most out of every day and help each other develop properly. So with that, thanks for your answers here. And if there's anything that we can do to follow up, we will. And I know Jamae just put my email address out there. So you can go ahead and contact me directly, but also we'll reach out so that we can provide you some more information. But thanks all for being with us today. Thanks, Jamae.
Thank you. Amazing work. Thanks so much.